Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time, Masechet Menachot. This is our first class, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 2 through 8. But first I want to give you a short introduction to Masechet Menachot. Those of you who have been learning with us for the cycle and who have those of you who have just completed Zvachim, it will definitely make this Masechet easier because it is a parallel Masechet. There are going to be various discussions that are parallel to what we have discussed in Masechet Zvachim, in terms of intent, in terms of how one does the service in the Beit HaMikdash. The only big difference, as you can see from the slide, is that menachot are grain offerings as opposed to animal offerings. So menachot are multiple minchas. A mincha is a flour offering. Either it was raw, it was baked, or it was fried. And there are going to be parallel services that are done with this type of sacrifice that parallel the animal sacrifices. The main thing is an action called kemitzah. Kemitzah is where the Kohen would take a handful of grain. It could be flour, it could be already the dough, but taking the kemitzah is like shchita, which is the beginning of, right? It's like separating something from the other. So we separate the blood from the animal. That kemitzah gets put into a sanctified vessel, a kli sharet, and then it gets put on the mizbeach, and we'll discuss more of that. But the kemitzah is removing a small amount of flour and oil, and that gets burnt on the mizbeach with livona. Livona is frankincense. And when that is burnt, it allows the rest of the mincha, like the leftovers, to be eaten by the Kohanim. The minimum amount of flour that is used is an isaron. It's about between 10 and 18 cups of flour. The flour that's used is fine flour. It's called solet, which means it's like finely ground. There are 2 menachot that are made out of barley, but the rest are made out of wheat. It is mixed with oil. The amount is, the minimum is 1 log, which is about half a liter. And for the nesachim, for the libations, it's more oil, so 2 to 3 log. There's also water that's added, and then livona. It's not mixed in; it's placed on top. Now, there are 2 main categories of menachot: nedava, voluntary menachot, and chova, and obligations. And each one is split into personal and communal. So for the personal, the nedava, the things that can be volunteered, there are 5 different types, and we're going to discuss all of these types in the Masechet. But there's solet, which is raw. There's machvat and marcheshet, which are fried on different types of frying pans, and then there's ma'afet tanur, which is chalot and rikikin. These are baked in an oven, and again, like more cracker type. It is important to recognize, even though we use the word lechem, we should recognize that all of the menachot or almost all of them, are matzah, meaning not chametz. They're not bread. They could be crackers. They can be different types of dough with oil and water, but they are not leavened. There's no leavening agent. They're done quickly. It's not chametz. For obligations, there are 4 types. So if a sin offering, a minchat choteh, if you're very poor and you couldn't afford an animal, you could bring a grain offering. What's called a mincha knaot. We learned about this in Masechet Sotah. For the woman who is suspected of adultery, she brings this type of mincha. It is actually barley, and there's no oil or livona. And then there's what's called the minchat chavitin. This was brought every single day by the Kohen Gadol, by the high priest, and half was done in the morning and half was done in the afternoon. And then there's something called the Minchat Chinuch. This was brought by a Kohen on his first day on the job. And that was his mincha. Those were personal menachot. Now we have communal menachot. There's the Omer, which is done on Pesach with barley. There's lechem hapanim, the showbread, which was put on the shulchan every Shabbat. There's the shtei halechem. These actually are chametz. They are 2 loaves of bread that are brought with a sacrifice on Shavuot, and then the libations that are brought with any korban. Every animal korban came with a grain offering, a nesachim. Everything that we just mentioned are kodshei kachim, which means that they are on a higher level, and kohanim eat the leftovers. Then we have kodshei kalim, a lower level of korbanot. We have the loaves of the todah. Again, the korban todah, the Thanksgiving offering, is brought with 40 loaves of bread. Again, 10 of them are chametz, but 30 of them are not. And one from each type, basically 4 loaves are given to the kohanim, but the rest are eaten by the owners. And the last is the Nazir also brings a mincha that, again, some of it is given to the Kohen, but the rest are eaten by the owners. Okay, the process, just quickly, you have some oil in the vessel, you put flour in it, you add more oil, you do something called blila. Blila means mixing. Then you add more oil. This is called yitzika, where you pour more oil on it. Then you add the livona, and then depending on the mincha, some of them are fried and then like broken up into pieces. Some of them are baked and then have oil like added at different stages. After it is prepared, there's something called tnufa. Tnufa means to wave. This is only done for 2 menachot, and the mincha is waved in 4 directions and then up and down, so basically 6. Another action is called hagasha, when it is touched, the mincha is touched to the southwest corner of the mizbeach. But we'll discuss which korban gets which action. And then the actual service, all of the things I just mentioned are preparations. Then the actual service, there are 4, just like we had in Zvachim. We have kemitzah, as we said, that's like shchita. Then you put it into a kli sharet, into a sanctified vessel. You take it to the mizbeach, and then you burn it on the mizbeach. So these 4 actions are parallel to what we had with the dam and all with the blood, and all of these actions are essential. Okay, so now let's start with the first Mishnah on Daf 2. So the Mishnah says that all menachot that are done lo lishma, meaning without the intent for that specific mincha, they are still valid, but they do not count for the owner. Now, what does it mean, lo lishma? It was for the wrong mincha, right? The wrong type of mincha, except for the sin offering and the sotah. Those are invalid if the Kohen didn't have in mind which sacrifice he was bringing, because again, as we said, for sin offerings, it's very important, and the same thing with the sotah. Okay, now if the other services are done lo lishma, again, then it becomes invalid. And if part of it is done lo lishma, meaning with the wrong intent, and part of it is done lishma with the right intent, it is still invalid. So now the Gemara explains that even if you had the wrong intent, you have to continue with the rest of the service. And then, even though you can't burn the sacrifice, the Kohanim can still eat it afterwards. And this is based on logic and on a verse. Okay, if the kemitzah, again, is done lo lishma, then it's still valid and it's still good for the owner, which is not the same thing with an animal. Why? Because with an animal, all four of those services are the same. But with a mincha, the way you prepare it shows which mincha it is. So if you then take it and fry it in a pan, I know that it's a machvat or marcheshet, meaning my action is going to show what the proper, what the sacrifice actually is. Okay, but some menachot are like a chatat. Again, if you do the kemitzah with the wrong intention, then it is invalid. Again, as we said, the action shows what mincha it's supposed to be, and therefore it should still be valid, though there's another opinion that says, no, if you have the wrong intent, it is invalid. Okay, Daf 3. So then the Gemara mentions we actually have this in Zvachim. What happens if the Kohen is doing the bird offering, the olah, which is done up on top of the Mizbeach, and let's say the Kohen had the wrong intention, but they're standing in the right place. Right here with the bird offering, your action actually does show which sacrifice you mean to do. The Gemara on Daf 3 says not necessarily, because certain things might look similar, and therefore this is not a similar discussion. What about Kadshe Kadshim? You had a sacrifice that was done in the north, but they had the intent that it was a different type of sacrifice. Maybe it should be okay, because again, the action is showing that you're doing it in the right place. The Gemara says no, because not necessarily. All right, for the Kadshe Kalim, they can be done anywhere, and therefore the action does not show which korban, which sacrifice you mean to be sacrificing. Okay. Okay, so then the Gemara continues and says that let's go to another case. If you have an olah, again, back to zvachim. So if you have a burnt offering and you slaughtered it as a sin offering, as a chatat, again, but it's obvious it isn't, because there are two different types of animals. An olah is male and a chatat is female. So the Gemara says, no, maybe we're talking about the goat of the nasi, of the leader. Both of them are male, and therefore maybe you could get confused. Again, what about confusing a chatat as an olah? Again, maybe that should be obvious because it should be valid because again, it is obvious. And then we say, well, maybe the Kohen wasn't looking at the sex of the animal, and therefore maybe there was the ability to get confused. Okay, if you do a mincha for a different mincha, again, it is valid. But if you do a mincha for an animal sacrifice, that is invalid. And then that would not be okay. Okay, now the Gemara says, maybe it's different if you did, again, the fried type of mincha versus again, there's two different types of pans that was used to frying it. So maybe if you did one for the other versus the other way around, then maybe it would be okay. Also, the question is, what did he have in mind? So one option is the Kohen thought marcheshet or machbat, which is the name of the type of mincha, but it's focusing on the utensil as opposed to minchat machvat, right? The grain offering that is this type versus minchat marcheshet, that's focusing on the fact that it is a mincha, and then it would be invalid. Okay, let's say it was a dry mincha and you did it as a wet mincha, right? You added the oil. Again, maybe you meant for it to be another type of mixture, and the Gemara says that would not be valid. Okay, daf 4 tells us a mincha as a korban, as an animal korban. Rabbi Shimon says that because you see the action, again, you know that it's a mincha, therefore it would be valid. Or again, the other side of the machloket is it would not be valid. As we said, the minchat choteh, the grain offering, which is a sin offering, if you did it with the improper intent, it would be invalid because it is like a regular sin offering where you need specific intent. Again, as we said, the same thing with the minchat tnaot, which is for the sotah. It needs to be done with the proper intent, and then the leftovers could be given to the fires of the mizbeach, of the altar, because both of them are called types of sin offerings. And as we know, sin offerings need to have proper intent. Okay, the minchat omer, which is, as we know, on the second day of Pesach, it was a barley offering that was done on the second day of Pesach, and it also has to be lishma. You have to have proper intent because it comes to allow new grain, right? This is what's called chadash or chadash, new grain that grows in the spring. You are not allowed to eat it until this sacrifice was brought on the second day of Pesach. Therefore, if you did not have proper intent, it would be invalid. Okay. Other things that need proper intent are a sham, guilt offering of the Nazir. and the asham of the mitzorah, of the person who has tzara'at, which is leprosy, if it's done without the proper intent, it is invalid, because bringing this sacrifice allows them to join the community. Or for the Nazir, it allows him to start his count again, and therefore they need to be done with proper intent. Okay, there is a difference between an animal sacrifice, or a sacrifice in general, which qualifies a person to eat sanctified food, versus a sacrifice that atones for a sin, right? So you could bring some sacrifices for atonement even after the owner dies, but you cannot bring a sacrifice that qualifies the person after they die, because the person is not there anymore. Okay, let's say a Nazir separated money for sacrifices and then he died. So you can bring his olah, the burnt offering, and the shlamim, the peace offering, but not the chatat, right? The sin offering. If the owner died, you cannot bring the sin offering, and the shlamim is brought after death, and it is a shlamim is not for atonement, it is to qualify him. How could it be brought? So we say that it's when we say something that qualifies the person, only if it's fixed. If it isn't fixed, then you could actually bring the sacrifice after the person died. Okay, Daf 5 speaks again about the Minchat HaOmer. Another opinion is that it could be done with the wrong intent. It would still be valid, but you can't eat the leftovers, what's called the shirayim. The Kohanim could not eat the shirayim till a new Omer is brought, but the original one can still be put on the Mizbeach. Okay, birds, the Gemara tells us that birds can be donated by two different people, but a mincha cannot be donated by two people. It can only be donated by one person at a time. A mincha needs a kli sharet, a sanctified vessel, but birds do not. And as we said before, the mincha also has tnufa and hagasha, these things are also communal sacrifices, but that is not the case. That is not the case with the birds. For the mitzorah, the person who has tzarat, leprosy, they put blood on the person, basically on their right ear, right thumb, big toe, and then they put oil on him as well. If you switch the order, so then it's okay, but you have to put oil on again, right? So if they did oil, blood, then you have to do oil again, because it has to be done in a specific order. This is based on a verse, so maybe everything also has to be done in a specific order. The Gemara says maybe not. Maybe the mitzorah is unique in that sense. Okay, since we're talking about the Omer, so the Gemara talks about when they would do the Omer. So when the sky starts to light up on the 16th of Nisan, which is the second day of Pesach, so then even before the sacrifice is brought, you could already eat the new grain. But the mitzvah is to wait till after the sacrifice is brought. Therefore, the Omer is valid even if it wasn't done with the proper intent, because the grain is already permitted. Another opinion is no. If you do it with improper intent, we said it has to have proper intent, and if it doesn't, if it's lo lishma, it's invalid. Then we said that you could, if you did it lo lishma, the grain is still permitted. Therefore, the sacrifice is valid. Another opinion is if it's done lo lishma, again with the wrong intent, it is valid, and they can even eat the leftovers, the shiraim, and you don't even have to bring another sacrifice, right? So that those are three different opinions about the minchat haomer. Okay, the Gemara now brings up a verse that talks about sacrifices of animals that need to be brought from animals, from ox, from cattle, from the flock, and then it says again from the cattle. So the Gemara asks, why is that repeated? So it says, it teaches that you can't bring a treifa as a sacrifice. Again, a treifa is an animal that we'll see another time and in another masechet. There are various conditions that the Gemara understood to mean that this animal will die within 12 months. An animal that's going to die within 12 months is not allowed to be brought as a sacrifice. So we say, maybe, why do you need a verse to teach this? Maybe we should just learn it from a kal vachomer. Remember, kal vachomer is where we compare two different laws, one being more lenient and one being more stringent. The Gemara says, no, it's not a valid kal vachomer because you cannot learn it from the fats, therefore you need a verse. You also can't learn it from milika, again, milika, the way you kill the way you slaughter the bird in the Beit HaMikdash. Therefore, you need a verse. You can't learn it from the Omer because again, you cannot compare, and the Gemara continues that you can't learn it from any one of these places. Therefore, you need the verse to teach about the treifa. You also, again, the person who you think maybe the person who makes the ktoret might prove that, again, he is he's not allowed to make, a regular person is not allowed to make the ktoret, but it is okay for the korban. And then we say, again, no, there is a mitzvah for a person to make the ktoret for the Beit HaMikdash, therefore we can't learn from that. You also can't learn, they try to learn from Shabbat, and it doesn't work either, and also from kilaim, right? Maybe a person would be permitted to do certain things, even though they're not permitted in the Beit HaMikdash, or vice versa, things that are permitted in the Beit HaMikdash as opposed to outside. And the Gemara says, no. What is the common denominator for all of these things on Daf 6, right? It says that, right, all of these things are forbidden for a person because of kedusha, because of sanctity, and it's forbidden for a person, but it is permitted in the Beit HaMikdash. So maybe a treifa would be okay in the Beit HaMikdash, and the Gemara says no, because it is a mitzvah. Therefore, to do all these different things, malika and blood and the fats, therefore, they are permissible in the temple. But a treifa, there is no mitzvah to bring an animal that is injured as a korban, and therefore it is not permitted. Okay, also because the treifa, you can't necessarily see the blemish or see the issue, and therefore it is still forbidden to be sacrificed. Okay, the next Mishnah tells us, hold on one second. Okay. the next Mishnah tells us that a minchat choteh, again, a sin that no, a grain sin offering, or any other mincha, if a non-kohen or a person who is an onen, remember who their immediate family member died that day, if they did the kemitzah, or a tvul yom, someone who is impure, or who didn't wash their hands and feet, or they are not circumcised, or again, impure for a different reason, or if they did it while they were sitting down or standing on on something that is not directly on the floor, all of these things are invalid, right? The kemitzah must be done in a proper way. If the kemitzah is done with the left hand, it is invalid. It has to be done with the right hand. And one opinion is that it's invalid. Another opinion is that you can put it back and you redo it with the right hand, and then it would be okay. If you did kemitzah and then hold on 1 minute. And then a pebble. When you did the kemitzah, there was like a rock with some of the flour that you picked up or some of the dough that you picked up. That would be invalid because the kemitzah has to be a full palm's worth of flour. And if it's not, or of dough, and if it's not, it's lacking, and therefore it is invalid. Same thing with livona. The kemitzah cannot be, we'll learn how they did the kemitzah. Basically, they would take like a palm's worth, a hand's worth, but then they would like brush out, from the bottom and brush from the top. So really it would be 3 fingers worth of flour, and it cannot be overflowing or lacking. It needs to be the exact amount. So now the Gemara explains the minchat choteh does not have oil or livona. So it isn't what's called mehudar. It's not like beautiful, right? It's not the nicest it could be. Therefore, it is singled out in the beginning of the Mishnah. So you might think that if it's already like seen as a lower level, if an invalid person did the kemitzah, maybe it would be okay. So the Gemara says, obviously, no, it has to be done properly, right? It says kol, right? Every mincha and every part of the mincha service must be done properly. There's a machloket if a non-Kohen did kemitzah and it now isn't around anymore. Can you bring more flour from your house and add to that flour? One opinion is yes. Another opinion is no, and we're going to see later on that there's a machloket. What is essential? Is it the fact that it is in a sanctified vessel, in a kli sharet, or is it when you do the kemitzah, and that is going to have ramifications? If the flour is still there, so the Gemara says just put it back, and then the proper person can do the kemitzah. Maybe it's different between the left hand versus the right hand because the person is still valid versus an invalid person, right? And we know that there are some services that could be done with the left hand, and therefore maybe it's okay. However, on the other hand, we know that a non-Kohen can do shchita of an animal, can slaughter the animal, so maybe that would be okay. The Gemara says that even if the non-Kohen sanctified the kometz in a kli sharet in the vessel, you have to put it back and you have to do it again properly. Or another opinion is no, it's invalid if he already put it in the vessel, and therefore you have to start all over again. If he didn't put it in the vessel, then it would be okay to put it back. Okay, so now we ask, is the kemitzah seen as an avodah, as a service, or not? Because again, we know that in an animal, shchita, it can be done by a non-Kohen. Everything from then on cannot be done. So then the Gemara says it is an avodah, but it's not a complete avodah till you put it in the vessel. But when you put it in, so then the Gemara says, but wait a minute, if you put it back into the original vessel, you're still putting it in a vessel. Maybe it should invalidate everything. So Daf 7 says that the kli sharet, the vessel, only sanctifies things if you had intent for it to be sanctified. If not, so then it does not sanctify it. So now, since we're talking about these vessels, can a kli sharet validate something that is invalid, and then can you put it onto the mizbeach? Right? Does it like fix a something that is invalid? So we say if it's not sanctified for the mizbeach, it does not sanctify for the mizbeach, but it does sanctify something to invalidate something with intent, meaning if you had the proper intent, it could invalidate the kemitzah that we just mentioned. If the flour is heaping over the kli, so then it's not considered inside the vessel, and therefore it is not valid. It has to be in the vessel. If you put it back in the rim and then like shake it and it goes into the vessel, that would be a good way to put it back because you didn't place it into the vessel. You kind of just put it on the side and it went in by itself. Okay, then the Gemara says that when you put something into the vessel, it has to be held. It can't be on the ground. So you have to lift up that vessel to take the kemitzah from it. And then you have to put the kemitzah into a new vessel that's also lifted up. So that seems to show that you need 3 kohanim every time you do kemitzah. Okay, so then we say, can you do kemitzah from a vessel that's on the ground? Now, we want to learn from the table, the shulchan, that was in the Beit HaMikdash. So it had the lechem panim, the showbread, and then in the middle, it had 2 cups of livona. These are called the bizichin. And every Shabbat, when they would replace the lechem panim with new bread, these cups would be taken to the mizbeach and burnt on the mizbeach. So we say that when you take the cups, it's as if you're doing kemitzah because you're taking the portion that needs to go onto the mizbeach. Now, these are being taken off of the shulchan, which is resting on the ground. So this seems to imply that you can take kemitzah from a vessel that is on the ground. What about sanctifying the kemitzah by putting it into a vessel that's on the floor? Again, do we learn from the bizichin and therefore it would be okay? Or do we learn from the blood and therefore it would not be okay? So then we go into a discussion about the blood that is collected for a sacrifice. And we say that blood cannot be sanctified into two separate vessels, but right, so blood needs to have a certain amount of blood in the vessel, and it can't be separated into two vessels. Now, since we're talking about blood, so the Gemara talks about when the Kohen has to sprinkle the blood, he has to dip his finger into the blood, and it has to be into a vessel that has a proper amount of blood in it already. Now, let's say he has extra blood. If it's not enough to sprinkle, he has to dip his finger in again. Now, we learned this also in Masechet Zvachim. If the blood landed on his clothing instead of sprinkling, so then he has to wash his clothing. If it's it landed on his clothing after doing the sprinkling, so then you do not have to wash the clothing. Then the Gemara talks about the para aduma, the red heifer, that the Kohen wipes when he does the service with the blood. Afterwards, he wipes his hand on the animal because it needs to be burnt complete with all of the blood. Okay. Now let's talk about the minchat chavitim of the Kohen Gadol. We said that it's brought in the morning. It's brought to the Beit HaMikdash. Half is sacrificed in the morning, half in the afternoon. So now the Gemara asks, can you sanctify only half the amount, right? So because really that's enough for the morning sacrifice, or maybe it is not enough. So that's a machloket. One is you have to put all of the flour in the vessel in order for it to be valid, or no, you can actually put in only half. Now, if we learn from the blood, then we just said that you cannot put in half, you have to put in all of it. So Daf 8, Rabbi Elazar does not learn one law in the Beit HaMikdash to another law. Therefore, you cannot compare blood to the mincha. Or he does learn one from the other, but only within the same law, meaning one mincha from another mincha, but not mincha from blood. Okay, so, we were talking about the lechem hapanim, the showbread that's on the shulchan. Now, if you took the bread off of the shulchan, but the bread broke before, again, it's not a loaf of bread, it's matzah, I mean, in a certain shape. So if it broke before you took it off, it becomes invalid, and you cannot sacrifice the bezichin, right, the livona that's in those cups. But if it broke after you took it out, so then the bread itself is invalid, but you can sacrifice the bezichin, right? So again, the bezichin are like the komets of the lechem hapanim, but the Gemara says, no, they're actually unique because you can see them already. They're separated from the lechem hapanim. Okay. Let's say you have a mincha without oil. It is still valid. It's still kadosh. This is learned from lechem hapanim. If you have a mincha without livona, it's still valid because the nesachim don't have livona. Again, the frankincense. And if it doesn't have oil or livona, it is also still valid. We learn that from the minchat choteh, which does not have, right, the grain sin offering, because that does not have oil or livona. Right, so each one, oil and livona, are independently kadosh. And since we're talking about things that are separate, there are separate measures. We also learned this in Zvachim. There are separate measuring cups for dry and for wet. And when you put the right thing in the right measuring cup, it becomes sanctified. But if you put the wrong thing, right, if you put something in the wrong measuring cup, it does not become kadosh. However, the basins, which are for mixing, they actually do sanctify whether it is wet or dry. Okay, the last idea is if you did kemitzah of the mincha, of the grain offering, in the hechal, meaning inside the building of the Beit HaMikdash, even though you're supposed to do it in the courtyard, it is valid because, as we said, the bezichin, when we take those cups of livona off of the shulchan, that's done in the hechal, it's done in the sanctuary, and therefore, and we said it's like kemitzah, therefore, if you do kemitzah in the sanctuary, it would be valid. The entire courtyard is a valid area to do kemitzah. It does not have to be done in the north. You might have thought that because a mincha is kodshei kodshim, it is the higher level of sacrifices, you might have thought you needed to do kemitzah in the north, just like the animals need to be slaughtered in the north. So kamash malan, right, the Gemara says, no, it does not have to be done in the north. Okay, with that, we are going to end tonight's shiur. I see we have a few minutes, so if anybody does have any questions, as we are in a new masechet, I'm happy to answer any questions. No? Good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Here you
of course, a burning question. Burning.
Yes.
The most obvious to the name of the afternoon service, mincha. You know, it's in the style of the Gemara. You might have thought, of course, you know, that it's like that service is only going to have dough or grain, but of course it doesn't. And do you have any insight as to why that it's called the mincha offering?
Why is the afternoon prayer called mincha?
Can you hear us?
Are you asking why the mincha, why the grain offering is called mincha? Or are you asking why
the afternoon prayer service that closes the temple for the day has one name? It's called the mincha service.
Right.
And the dictionary mentions mincha is first, if it's capitalized, would be that service. But the second meaning is it's the grain offering, etc. So we get all of that, but I have just never understood why the afternoon service is mincha when it actually includes a lamb and wine and other things.
Right. So first of all, the word mincha means a gift. So it doesn't necessarily mean grain offering. We use it to mean a grain offering, but the actual word means a gift. So that's interesting to think about in terms of the sacrifice. And I agree with you that I don't think the prayer being called mincha is connected to the grain offering mincha, but I have to do more research. I'm not sure, because shacharit is shachar, the morning, and arvit is erev. So it's interesting that mincha is neither here nor there, right? It's ben ha'arbaim, it's in the afternoon. I think it's like a bonus tefillah, but I honestly never put the two together.
The bonus tefillah, maybe that's the gift.
Right, that's what I was thinking, but I literally just made that up, so that's not really based on anything. But it is interesting because the truth is that the obligatory sacrifices were morning and afternoon. It's the, you know what I'm saying? Those are the obligations. It's the nighttime one that's actually bonus. So it's
Yes.
interesting to think about that. So let me do some research and get back to you.
Well, I don't mean to put that on your schedule. You don't
It's
have
okay.
to, but I really, fresh eyes, right? The very
I
first
love
time
it.
years ago, that was my first question, and I've never been able to ask anyone, and I've never gotten any answer.
Interesting. Okay. I will look into that for you and Bli Neder get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sanctity. That's wonderful. That's
I
fun.
love it. I really never thought of it. So that's great.
Growing
Okay.
up, you hear things and you accept it, and you never think, as you said, Lynn, that it's fresh eyes, and all of a sudden you're saying, "Wait a minute, I never thought of that."
Excellent. I will say, but this is really a stretch. Mincha, right, we know is learned from Yitzchak. I'm really making this up, but
Yeah.
I just thought of it. Mincha is learned from Yitzchak, and it says that he goes lasuach basadeh. He goes out to talk to God in the field. So I'm wondering if the field was a grain field, and maybe that's why it's called mincha, because it's out in the grain. But that's just a thought that I had.
Yeah, but then again, Cain offered grain, and it wasn't a happy thing in
Yeah, that's
Hashem's
true.
eyes.
That's true. That's
Well,
true.
it wasn't because it was grain. It was because it wasn't the best of his produce.
Right, correct.
That was the problem with it, not because it
Correct.
was grain as opposed to animal.
Yeah,
Just
wonderful
grain.
ideas.
Okay.
I appreciate you just going out there, Rabbanit, and just offering something that it's just off the cuff, because we
tried.
understand that when you qualify it, that you're just doing that, but you have a lot up there. And if that jumps out at you, I think that's what they call a professional opinion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I call it
An
making.
educated guess,
I
maybe you
call
could
it
say.
making things up, but I'll take. I'll take.
No, but it's
I'll
an
take it.
educated guess. You're bringing examples. It's not
Okay.
just making things up. You're
Right.
basing it on
Right.
something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, to be continued. I look forward to a great masechet of grain. So no blood, so that's good. And Bezrat Hashem. So if you didn't realize, I changed it to Tuesday night. I hope that it looks like it works for some people. So I appreciate you showing up. And as always, thank you for your flexibility.
Two things.
So
One, I want to apologize. I called you by your secular name, Ilanit, not Lynn. Sorry.
It's okay. Hashem gave me both of them.
Okay. And Aliza is traveling, and that's why she's not on. I don't know if it's a matter of
okay.
the day being changed. It's just actually wouldn't have been tomorrow either. So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wishing everyone a Chodesh Tov and a Shavua Tov. And Be'ezrat Hashem, see you next week. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night, everyone.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.